Howdy, this is Brian again. How you doing today? I thought I would just speak up on a couple things having to do with communism, fascism, capitalism, democracy, and religion. See if there's any points that might be interesting to some folks out there. I appreciate your time. Anyway, so I looked up some of it, and then, it says communism, property is owned publicly, and factories are kind of community, and the government owns those things, and it's a classless society, and workers are supposed to control the means of producing things. Of course, in a communist society, you would think the guy that runs it would probably have the most humble of all homes, but it doesn't usually work that way. But as far as communism, I read a good book about, 20, 30 some odd years ago, MiG fighter pilot, a gentleman that defected from Russia and landed on the northern island of Hokkaido in Japan. And he was mentioned how, he just wanted to be a fighter pilot, and he went to, school and college and tried to do everything he could to get there. And he worked at factories in the summertime. And while he was at one factory, somebody in the factory breaks a little system down so that they can go and have their vodka lunch. And, after about a week, when the guys that are, supposed to get their quotas, the foremen and stuff, say, oh, what's going on? Once the tension gets strong enough, then he'd go back in that corner of the factory and fix it, and everything come back online. So there's really no innovation, motivation. So that was one of the problems with the communist society. But then you have the fascism, which is far-right authoritarian government controls, and it's state-controlled economy. But you can own your own property, but it's very militaristic. Then we got the capitalism. And then this is where private business can own and capital goods, and the motive is to make a profit. And it creates innovation. That's true. That's definitely true. And also, but it says it can also create inequalities and market failures. Well, I know that Theodore Roosevelt kept capitalism from going over the edge. When you got kids working in mines, for coal mines and things, crawling through little holes. And in a capitalist society, if it's unchecked, they don't care if the kid gets black lung. If the whole family's working there and they're renting out and they're buying goods from the company store and they're having to rent a little hovel, and they can make the expense greater than what all that whole family can work in the mine, then that's capitalism at its worst. That's not the innovative side, that's the bad side. And then, of course, market failures. Capitalism can do, where you're repackaging loans and it's just purely for profit. You're not really producing anything. That's another bad point of capitalism. And thankfully, we have a blend in we have a democracy. And that's where you have the elected representatives that are supposed to work for the people. And a republic is also supposed to have elected officials that work for the people. But at least we are trying to put in, our forefathers and founding fathers put in checks and balances to try to, and so we have a blend of social safety net and also innovation. But right now, with some of the things that are going on, I just heard about some gay sex in the Congress or the Senate or something, and I guess the guy got fired, and of course the crime rates, and so we're having some issues, but we're also spending a lot of money and for overseas. So as we decay and don't try to take care of things at home, we're trying to keep the war game going because people make money selling war goods and things. And so that was part of it. And then, of course, in a capitalist society, you probably, if you're a capitalist making a lot of money, you wouldn't have liked Theodore Roosevelt because he was putting, you know, different checks and balances to keep things he was more for the square deal, you know, for the little guy. So if he works and, you know, works 40 hours or 50, 60 hours a week, at least he has a roof over his head. And so he was breaking down monopolies and keeping competition and trying to keep innovation too. So he was good, actually, for our capitalist democracy. And then, of course, Erin Brockovich, she should be running the EPA, but if you're a capitalist, you don't want somebody saying, well, if you have a train that's got toxic chemicals, you got to have X amount of checks on the braking system, you got to have enough people on it, you got to have the tracks inspected, and you got to have a double-walled, you know, container or whatever. And so that cuts in on the immediate profits. So in that case, a capitalist might not want Erin Brockovich, but we got to get the best balance of capitalism and you know, responsibility for the whole group and our environment. And then you got religion. Well, religion is something that affects the way people interact. And so what's interesting is Muhammad, well, he was supposed to be one of the more honest guys. You know, in Arabia, it was there was a lot of robbery and stuff going on, and a lot of different gods. People back, you know, around 700 A.D. going on. So he was pretty well an honest guy, and but some of his stuff kind of goes off like, you know, if they don't believe it, you cut their heads off. So some of that is amazing. Yet there's people, there was a person that was Muslim right after 9/11. His son was killed because he was Muslim. And the father actually forgave the people that killed his son, maybe because he could see it from other eyes, or put his feet in other people's shoes. But that is, which to me makes him a person that is far better than the originator of the Muslim, you know, like Muhammad. I mean, Muhammad, I guess, was a pretty honest guy, but he was married. His first wife was older, a successful businesswoman. So how in certain Muslim countries would they, when Muhammad himself was kind of being helped by a successful businesswoman, why would they want to put women in burqas? It doesn't make sense. And then, of course, you also have Judaism and parts of that. You know, when you go looking at the Old Testament, for Christian Old Testament and the Judaism, and even also for the Muslim, it kind of goes back to the Old Testament. And there was a lot of eye for eye, tooth for tooth. You know, this group is doing better than that group, and this group tricked this group into something else. But I kind of thought that, at least in the Jewish religion, it looked like that God was bending over backwards in cases to help them out. And then, like King David, he did good. He was brave and had a lot of faith in God. And then, but once he got, you know, successful, and things were happening, he kind of, when he fell in love with this one woman, he sent the husband, because she was married, to the front lines, hopefully to see if he'd get killed. And he did get killed, and they got married. And then it says in the Old Testament, you know, that they had the firstborn was stillborn, because God was pissed off that he did that. And then, of course, his son Solomon, he liked to tax people, he liked money, and then he liked lots of women. And so it shows even early on they admit imperfections. I really like Moses. I think even the Muslims, the Christians, and the Jews, everybody loves Moses because he could kind of see both sides. And he was brought up, wealthy with the aristocracy in Egypt. And so, but then he saw how bad it was for the Jews in Egypt at that time. And so I think God bent over backwards, but he had the 10 Commandments there, and he got so mad when everybody, once they got free, just started partying, and I guess they were starting to believe in lots of different idols and things. So I think the 10 Commandments are a good thing. But I think the most important thing, I guess they call it the Golden Rule. I'm not sure if it's part of the 10 Commandments or it came a little later, but to be able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes and treat them as you'd want to be treated. So that was one of the good things. Now, one of the most recent religion in the 1844 or so was the Bahia. And the guy that started that was he was Muslim, and I saw a special on TV, and he was getting ready to go to the firing squad because he pissed people off the same way Jesus pissed people off. Jesus was flipping the tables over. He said, "Don't do this in my Father's house. You're not here to make money. You're here to open the hearts of people to God and what he wants." And so this guy was very similar. So the established Muslim clerics and things didn't like him because he was shaking things up and getting them so they wouldn't be in their nice positions that they liked. So they put him in the firing squad. Apparently, they had two. This was from a special I saw. I mean, I wasn't there in 1844. But they had 250 people, and they shot at him. And when the dust cleared, he was not there, but he was down because he said he hadn't finished some of the writings. He says, yeah, the women don't need to be wearing all this stuff, covering themselves up to that degree. So then once he said he finished it, he went back up. And then, I don't know how 250 people missed him, but they shot him and he died. So that was the guy that started the Baha'i faith, which kind of conglomerates certain aspects of a lot of religions. But the most important part of it is courage, love, and taking care of each other. And the things that we see now happening in the Middle East and some of the decadence in our own country and crime rates, I don't know why we're spending so much money, because I think it's kind of a crime what's happening in the right-wing Netanyahu government. But and we need to take care of some things here. And I say, stop the 2,000-pound bombs, stop everything, and let them get used to being more on an equal footing with everybody around. And then if they get in trouble, we'll help them out. But it's getting to the point where you're creating too much hate. And I had met a guy that he was ex-Muslim that went to Christianity, and he seemed to say, oh yeah, the Quran is the book of revenge or something. So I don't know if it's a book of revenge or not, if they really like that eye for eye and tooth for tooth stuff. But I'll tell you, if it is a book of revenge, well now, the Jewish deal is all you're doing is creating the need for more revenge. When really, we got to get all that to stop, build the Gaza back up, and get people one vote for one person or a two-state solution, and treat people as humans, and there'll be less of this revenge stuff. But it's already getting to the point where the idea is going to, take more and expand. All these countries, there's a lot of countries that don't, they still send oil over to, and fuel, to Israel because they are used to the good life. You go to Arabia, they love, if they have somebody from Southeast Asia building the buildings and he falls off that bamboo scaffolding from 1,000 feet up, well, sorry, Charlie, just hurry up and get our new building built. We are used to, race horses and bull riding, and we like the good life, and we don't want it to slow down. Yet there are also people there that are looking for ways to, start fracking and steam injection, because they know oil's not going to flow forever. But it's easy once you're accustomed to something to live a way that you're accustomed to, and so I think the in Israel, they are kind of accustomed to having Palestinians as third or second or third class citizens, or and I think we need to get it to where everybody's on the same level, and then there'll be less and less hatred if people are on the same level, and then there'll be less and less radicalism and less terrorism. And the United Nations needs to have a little power there, and hopefully we'll get either a two-state solution or a one-state solution where people have one vote and don't treat each other too bad. Because in this country we have freedom of religion, so hopefully we'll get and one vote for one person. I think that's what we need there too, and we'll see how it goes. It's getting to the point where it's going to be retribution, and even though a lot of the other Islamic countries don't want to do something, their populace is going to rise up and say, "You got to do something. These people are out of hand." And then I guess we give Egypt a couple billion a year just to keep the peace, and pretty soon they won't even care about that. But we got to take care of things here too, and make sure that the people we support and countries we support are ethical. Anyway, thanks for your time. Have a great day. Bye.